Welcome to a late show of Seminole Sidelines, the first impressions of Florida State's 20-13 loss to Stanford. Not what we expected from Florida State, not only as a 17-point favorite, but really Mark Salva, our football analyst, joining us. I'm Bob Ferranti in Pensacola, having watched some of the baseball exhibition play today, so we're covering multiple items here on the Osceola.com, but a lot to unpack from Saturday night's game as we are now into Sunday morning. Mark, when we talked earlier on Saturday, I expressed to you I felt like this was a mindset game. This is one where Florida State had to show up with the right mindset, the right focus, not jet lag, not distracted, not making mental mistakes. We instead saw penalties, a lot of these needless penalties that really dug Florida State into a deficit that they could not dig out of. It was that 20-13 loss. And if somehow you could erase a few penalties, this game is different. But I think that's the story of Mike Norvell's era to some extent this season, to many extents too. Mark, where do you want to start as we talk about Mike Norvell, the program, what's going on here?
We talked earlier today, and obviously, I mean, they're all must-win games. They have been for a while, so that this is nothing new as far as that goes. But the effort that was given, the level of concentration that was displayed today, the attention to detail that had to happen against a team that was every bit as hurting as much as we were, if not more, and a second team quarterback. All the stuff around the game of the team that we were playing, and what had to happen in this game, all the things I just mentioned, and the way that thing unfolded, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I literally could not. It was unrecognizable. Actually, my wife said that. Julie said, "This is unrecognizable." And I said, "What do you mean? It's been like this for about 18 months." Right?
And this is the worst. Is this the abyss? It felt kind of tonight, Mark, like this is the worst Florida State football I think I've seen, though, in that 18 months. Or am I wrong?
I think there were probably worse performances last year, for sure. I think because of what had to happen going into this game, not having won a league game in over a year, that became a thing this week, especially, not showing up at all it just couldn't happen. It absolutely couldn't happen. And you kind of understand the Miami loss. Okay, they're better than we are. The Virginia thing, Friday night games, Miami found out about that, right? The Pitt loss, I felt last week that a line was crossed by Mike in the direction of the program. To me, that was a line crossed, was last week. And so, having said that, this had to be your A game performance against the team that there was no excuse not to come in and it to be the program that we purport ourselves to be, and to roll out there and throw that and have that performance is absolutely unexcusable. I could not believe it. The penalties, unbelievable. The lack of execution on both sides of the ball. The inability to get off the field in the third quarter by the defense, having them pinned back. Not being able to run the ball against that defense. All of it. There's plenty. So it's not just individual position groups, people, performances. This is the entire program. And it's I hate it because look, I like Mike a lot. I think the things that the pluses he has are tremendous. His work ethic. I mean, he all the credit in the world for what he did up to 2023 anyways. Rebuilding the program, because look, make no mistake about it, it was rock bottom at the end of Willie's tenure. There was all kinds, from every aspect of the program. It was not good. And Mike got all that turned around, right?
Yep.
So the pluses with him are great, but the concerns I think we had coming in with him was building a roster that could compete at the level we want to compete at this level. That he's never done it at this level, and that was always the concern. But it's different, right? It's different recruiting against Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Miami. Those kind of people, to acquire the talent you have to get. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. But put that aside for the moment. You had to have your best stuff this game. There's no holding back. Every attention to detail. I mean, this is the week that you start the week. You say, you know what? Everybody is 100% focused on this outcome. Do what you need to do. Be disciplined. I mean, every detail coached. You don't jump off sides on 4th and nothing when they're not going to snap the football. That's absolutely ridiculous, right?
And that's not a freshman. That's what a redshirt junior or
yeah.
And we're not calling out one specific guy, but
no, this is not on the players
tonight. This is 13 penalties. You've got to coach discipline.
It's an expectation, and it's accountability. Is there accountability in this program? I don't know. I'm not there every day. I don't know how they do things. I know there's access, how they practice. I don't know any of that. Okay, but I do see the result on the field, so that kind of gives me a good clue, right? Because how you play is how you practice, and that truth is universal. That'll never change about this game of football. Right? How you practice and how you play. And if that's the product we're putting out on the field, that tells me a whole heck of a lot. And there's no excuse. There really isn't. I don't want to hear about penalties, about officials not calling it fair. I don't want to hear about, guys got to make plays. Guys got to not lose contain. Guys got to set the edge. Guys have to cover guys, you have to make the throws. You have to make the catch. I mean, I don't care about the officials and all that stuff. That doesn't interest me. It's about the preparation going into the game and the mindset when you get off the plane and you get there, and to roll that performance out was it. I don't know. Like I said, I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of words for it. I found myself bumfuzzled, to use a Bobby Bowden word from years ago, watching something that doesn't resemble a Florida State football team in the way it's coached, the way it should play. The penalties, I mean, let's just go through a couple of quick numbers before we get into the obvious commentary on Coach Mike Norvell and where the program sits. 13 penalties, 87 yards. I'd bet if we went through the stat broadcast, 10 or 11 of those are self-inflicted and things that could have been easily avoided. Everything from the Edwin Joseph jumping off sides on the field goal attempt that becomes a touchdown. That's probably the one that's maybe the most glaring, but then the Daniel Lyons jumping off sides. There's an accumulation.
The late hit
on James Williams.
to keep the drive going. I mean, every one of those penalties were
couple delay games.
Every one of those penalties either put us behind the chains or put them extended drives for them, which resulted in points.
And we thought, again, the bread and butter of this offense, what Gus Malzahn wants to do is run the ball, and he knows that he has the personnel to do it. The offensive line, the running backs, that's the strength of really the football team, not just the offense, the offensive line and the running backs. That's a true strength. Didn't really get it done. 44 carries, 133 yards, 3-yard average. I would venture a guess that is the worst by a good margin in a Power 4 game for Florida. So I think they had averaged 4 low 4s at minimum in a couple of these games of late. So, okay, people are up really late, 2:30 on the East Coast, and they want us to say something about Mike Norvell. And here's the pisser, guys. It happens in a bye week. We know what happens in bye weeks to struggling coaches. There's going to be a lot of people saying that Mike Norvell should be fired. It is a between $53 and $58 million question, money that's paid out over time between now and 2031, if that decision is indeed made by the stakeholders at Florida State. It's a massive current and future decision. It's one about all the future decisions of the program, the direction of where things are going, the recruiting, the player development. Mark, I don't know if Mike Norvell has a table to stand on right now at all. Can he go to Michael Alford, Peter Collins, Dr. McCullough, the president? Can he ask for 5 more games? Is that about the only thing that he can do? Because otherwise the product is 1-11 in the last 12 ACC games. It's insanely bad. Does he have anything that he can ask for as far as time?
You know, when we tied ourselves to him after 2023, nobody thought that this was possible. And lo and behold, here we sit. It's a complex, complicated question, because the other question is, who can we get with other jobs coming open? Penn State's open. Florida may be open. Auburn may be open. I mean,
Auburn may be open. Yep.
There's any number of schools that we're going to have to compete for talent with. And so there's that. So you have a buyer's market, so to speak, right? And so there's that question too, because but we are at a low point in this program. I don't think we're as low as we were in terms of the health of it. We're not playing well, but the program itself, in terms of the infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, is not where it was when before, with the last guy. It was. So who can you get? A lot of people probably say Dion. Dion come home. I don't know. I don't know. It's a complex question. But to your question, does Mike have a leg to stand on? The answer is obviously unequivocal no. I mean, and he knows that. Yeah. He's not. You go as a coach. I've crapped the bed. That's essentially what's happened here, and it's unfortunately that's the situation. I see Rhett Lashley. I saw Gus. I mean, is that any better? I don't know. I mean, you kind of get a different version of the same guy. It is what it's a complex question, but firing Mike and dishing out that money, it's a question that the accountant's got to look at, because Jerry brought up a good point, is that if you keep on this trajectory, now you lose season ticket holders, and now you start losing tens of millions a year, and what's the lesser of two evils here, right? And it's a complex question about what to do at this point in the middle of the season on a bye week. So I don't know the answer to that question, and I don't have to make that decision. I do know that it's not working. It's not working, and it doesn't look good right now. Now, again, that product tonight was absolutely inexcusable, because it had to happen, and it didn't. Oh man, I just look, we're barely 10 minutes from the end of the game, and so there's all kinds of feelings and thoughts going through my head, about the game, about the program. It's where to go from here. I mean, what's the direction? It's a tough question.
And Mike Norvell is probably, as we speak, fielding some of these questions from various Florida State beat writers, including Jerry Cutts, our publisher, who's out in Palo Alto. And obviously more will unfold after we're done talking, and we'll see what transpires. Mark, I have to come clean. I wrote a column a week ago basically outlining the financial ramifications of why you don't make this move. It's not just the money. It's, hey, next year's schedule, 2026, is is Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida, Miami. You're going to put a new coach out there in a honeymoon against those type of teams, potential playoff teams. It almost feels like next year's record is not looking so good, regardless of who the coach is, just because the schedule could be daunting as you go into rebuild mode, as you go into building relationships with new prospects, both high school recruits, portal recruits. There are a lot of challenges ahead. Again, whether this decision comes Sunday, in a couple days, a game or two down the road, I keep coming back to this as a massive number, Mark. We haven't seen, except for the Jimbo Fisher buyout, 75 or so million at Texas A&M. The James Franklin buyout is 48 million at a Big Ten school that's got some deeper pockets because of that revenue distribution. These are massive numbers. And again, I think what we're coming back to is, can you find a man who can coach from an X and O standpoint, who can CEO, who could hire the right assistants, who can recruit in the state of Florida and Georgia, who can do all those things, or delegate some of that to his trusted guys? Can he do it better than Mike Norvell? And you're going to be south, what, $7 or $8 million a year because you're paying 85% of Norvell's salary moving forward. I'm on board if this is what needs to happen in the eyes of the Florida State stakeholders. But Mark, I'm struggling with the who. I think we kind of kicked around the who a little bit earlier. I'm not sure there's a slam dunk guy. You called it a buyer's market. It's almost like real estate. You want to be in a market where there's not that many other buyers, and there's some great candidates out there. There are too many buyers out there right now. I think that's what kind of scares me too. You get into a bidding war against Jimmy Sexton, who's undefeated, truly undefeated when it comes to the leverage play here. So again, like we talked about, is Gus a partial interim head coach answer? He doesn't want to be a head coach. He has said it, right? Is Odell Hagen's warming up in the bullpen? I hate even using that phrase because it's the third time he would be coming in to stabilize things, but potentially he is that man if they go to an interim. Mark, I don't have a lot of answers here. This is a season we didn't expect after the Alabama win.
No, and that's the thing. As I'm watching that game, I'm going, where was that team? Where was that team that played against Alabama? You know, the lack of enthusiasm and fire was I just, again, I couldn't believe what I was watching on that. You know, I would think that, you know, through the week that they would be peaking emotionally and be really dialed in, and the penalties and the mistakes definitely speak to that. It was not even close to the case, you know. And so I was, who do you bring in? Man, it's not an easy answer. We are in a tough spot. Look, that's the bottom line. We are in a tough spot, and you know, we knew when Mike came in, it was going to take multiple years, and we granted him that. And after 3 years, he delivered, right? He delivered, and we had a fantastic season. And now we're back to where we were. But the confidence in him being able to do that again is obviously not there. And so, do you go to the next guy and say, you know what, we're going to have to rebuild next year? Might be a wash, like it was in 19 or 18 or 20, whatever it was. 20, I guess, and just take the lumps and build from there. I mean, that's basically where we're at, because in this era of the transfer portal and NIL, there's no telling what the roster is going to look like next year. And if Mike is still the guy, and we're still on this trajectory, it's going to be even harder. We're going to have to pay a mega premium to get any kind of player worth their salt. I mean, we're already paying a premium to get average players, you know. And we're going to have to pay a premium to get, you know, to get the kind of players that we need to turn this around. What kind of premium are we going to have to pay on that? You know, it's just, I'm looking for a glimmer of hope somewhere. And I can't at this moment at 1:45 at Central Time after that game. I just I don't see it. Um, so man, this is why I got out of coaching. Be honest with you.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not for the faint of heart. The good times are really, really good, and thank goodness I had some good times. But the bad times are really, really bad, man. And there's only one happy team at the end of the year, anyways. It's just to have your livelihood dependent on this stuff. It's maddening. But it is what it is. I don't envy those guys at all because I know how they feel. I do. I've been in this spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes these things aren't out of your control. But that's the thing. I think this was in their control a lot more than, and because they had all the guys back, they didn't have the excuse. Well, we're playing with young guys that don't have experience because we have a lot of injuries, et cetera, et cetera. All the key guys were here. So
yeah, Deuce Robinson was back, 4 catches, 98 yards. Randy Pittman.
Randy Pittman, Boggs. I mean, they're all back. So that there was an excuse. Back to this game, the most disappointing thing to me was the performance of the running game. Now, it's obviously Tommy's not 100%, and losing the threat of him running the ball, in the inability to have a consistent passing game. The first wide receiver screen they threw was in the fourth quarter that I remember. And early in the I'm thinking, we're trying to beat our head up against the wall running the football. Let's loosen them up a little bit. Throw some of these wide receiver screens and get 4 or 5 yards on first down and maybe break one. And we threw one tight end screen earlier in the game. I think the second quarter. But I'm thinking to myself, where's those easy? Because we don't have an intermediate passing game. We threw one curl on a third down that was good, but we never went back to anything like that. We try to do some mesh stuff, some guys crossing whatever, but the inability to do that consistently. Tommy throws a great deep ball. He puts it in really good place. Now he looks awful throwing it, but it gets to the right spot, right? So I'll give him that.
Dancy. Remember we were talking about?
Oh gosh,
he overthrew Dancy.
He sure did. He threw it flat. He threw a flat ball. That's why.
He did.
If he put a little air under it, he might have got it. But all that being said, the inconsistency in the intermediate passing game, and the lack of, I don't want to say lack of complexity, but just the lack of variety in the intermediate passing game, we're beating our head up against the wall trying to run the ball. And and when you don't have the threat of the quarterback run because he's not 100%, that really that hinders the design of this offense. That if that guy can't pull it and run, or is ineffective doing it, which he was, then that's a problem. Now we're losing the numbers game, and that was the most disappointing thing, is that we never really had an answer for that. And of course defensively,
Yeah.
Geez, I mean, we have them pinned down inside the 5, and they go all the way on, and largely because of penalties. We can't get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. On 3rd down and long, we let them get enough to where they try forward on 4th and they end up getting it, or we jump off sides, or we hit the quarterback late, or we get a pass interference, or they complete one. I mean, look, if I was a quarterback, I'd love to play against this defense. We make every quarterback look like a Heisman Trophy candidate, even a kid who's never thrown a pass in a college game. I mean, it's crazy, right? So I just it's this game has just really just stuck a fork in me. It really has. I'm just last week I was cautious. We had crossed the line, but I had hope. I don't have hope right now, and that's a bad thing to say, because I'm usually a pretty hopeful guy. I'm usually pretty balanced and can say, you know what, there's still a chance here. I can't see that right now. I just can't.
Yeah, I think we were all deeply, disturbed maybe at why you lose to Pitt when Pitt is so shorthanded with what Desmond Reed does, but you have optimism. Stanford is just not very good at this whole football thing. Let's be very honest. That's not a good football team. the defense was giving up 30 or so points per game. I think there was optimism what Florida State could do against Stanford, get the bye week, go against Wake, and you start to think this team can build a little bit of momentum and a little bit of feel good. So now, Mark, you go into the bye week, and it's not the way you want to go into a bye if you're a player. You mentioned accountability early on, though, and maybe we just wrap with this because we talked about a lot tonight, but I've felt all along that there is leadership, and as a result, leaders can breed accountability among their teammates, that they go hand in hand. There's a correlation. Boy, this is testing my theory, my resolve that there is enough accountability among the players. But what guidance can coaches, can veterans give to leaders to say, keep your head up? The next ball game is November 1st. There's 5 to go. There's a lot to fight for, even if it's not what you really wanted to be fighting for after a win over Alabama. But how do you shift that mindset here moving forward?
Well, you got to be uncompromising in every single aspect of everything. You can't let little things go at all, ever. You got to look at everything you do as a coaching staff, as a head coach, and as a position coach, and as a collective. Look at everything that you do. Look at every process, every way you hold your meetings, all the way you structure practice, all the way that you coach, the things that you say, the things that you emphasize. Look at everything. And where is the gaps? Well, obviously there's gaps in accountability somewhere because there's way too many penalties, the execution's way poor, the attention to detail is not there, and if it's putting, look at every player, are we putting the right players are the right pegs in the right holes? Do we got the right people in the right places? Are we doing things that this guy can't do? Are we calling schemes thinking that we can execute it, but this guy doesn't have the ability to do it? And do we need to back off on that, or do we need to do something different? I mean, all that stuff. You got a bye week. You got to really hone down and figure all that stuff out and come up with another plan, because this plan ain't working at all. And then you get your team leadership and you let them know, you know what? I don't know how they coach. I don't know. I'll know this. I see a penalty. I see the guy jump off sides. I see something said. I see another coach pat him on the back, kind of thing, and I'm going, I'm chewing that guy's butt off. I mean, at some point, somebody's got to, get on them. I don't know if they do that. I don't know. Are they rah all the time, and it's respond all the time? How are you going to respond? Is it, there's challenging in that way, but there's also challenging in pushing buttons, and I mean, old school, right? Get after somebody's ass, basically, right? Get after their butts, because that's what you need. So sometimes that's what it takes. There's a lack of toughness and resolve that's usually forged in that kind of attitude and that kind of pushing somebody. You got to push these guys to their limits. Sometimes I don't know that it's ever happened for some of these guys. And yeah, Keith, I agree. The first thing I said was, these are things bad football teams do, but it runs deeper than concentration. It's this culture right now just stinks. There's not it's tough for me to put my finger on it. You just look at them out there, and I think they're playing hard. I think they think they're playing hard, but have they ever been pushed? Have they ever pushed to their limit? I mean, every day they should be pushed to the limit. Every day, they should walk off that field absolutely just spent, physically and mentally. So when they get in the game, it's easy. Is it that way? I don't know. I'm not there, but I see the product on the field.
But it's different. I think it's going to your point of you guys made Tuesdays and Wednesdays tougher than anything you were ever going to have a player face on a Saturday. And clearly these Tuesdays and Wednesdays just aren't adding up to. Now we have heard some at times, I don't, hey, this is coach speak, right? But Mike Norvell said, hey, we're seeing certain things on the practice field. They look good on the practice field, but then the mistakes, the problems are popping up on Saturdays. What's lost in the translation here? I'm at a loss to articulate it.
That's where I go back to say, okay, well, if that's the case, then you got to look at what you're doing, right? Go back, inventory exactly how you're spending your time, what you're emphasizing, how you structure practice. You know, who says what to who and when and how and all. I mean, everything. Scrutinize everything. Because if that's the case, then there's a gap, right? There's a gap, and you got to fill that gap. You got to figure it out, because you're out of time. You are out of time. You may not have the time. It may be gone already. I don't know. But there's nowhere else to go. We're at the bottom of the bottom right now, and Alabama bought you a little more time, essentially. You know, but it's gone. That is gone. That is so far in the future, especially looking at how Alabama is now. Everybody knows that was a fluke, because it was. Okay, it was. They didn't know what we were going to do. You know, we had new schemes on both sides of the ball, new personnel. They didn't take us really seriously. We had it at home, first game of the year. We had all of that. And all that added up to us really playing with our hair on fire. But I hadn't seen that team show up again since. You know, I think those two games after probably did, hurt us more than helped us, honestly. You know, but there's no excuse. I mean, there's not. And wow, it is a heck of a time to have a bye week. What a bad taste in your mouth to have a bye week.
It's going to be a long couple weeks, and then there's a home game with Wake Forest, and you have to start asking how many fans are going to make that drive to Tallahassee from Miami, South Florida, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Atlanta, from the population centers of FSU alumni. Are they willing to make that drive to cheer on the Noles or watch from home instead? It's going to be a very interesting reception for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. Guys, I'll be honest with you. If there's news on Sunday, later today, we'll be back on the Osceola YouTube channel. We'll have stories on the Osceola.com. We'll try to break down whatever is announced. Just logistically, if you're curious about interview schedules, the coordinators are not talking on Sunday because of the late flight back. The team's expected 9 or 10 a.m. Eastern time back in Tallahassee. So no coordinators on Sunday night. So if you're wondering why didn't that happen, it's not specific to this loss. It's just the logistics of everything. Mike Norvell is not talking on Monday. He's scheduled to go Wednesday, again with the coordinators on Tuesday. Again, that could change if some announcements are made here. And we'll have more on the Osceola.com. We'll have more on the Osceola's YouTube channel as we kind of unpack whatever is next for Florida State. Again, after a 20-13 loss to Stanford, something we clearly didn't expect, but we're trying to unpack this one in real time with you. And again, appreciate you all watching. And more than 600 people watching us live at almost 3 a.m. on the East Coast. So we appreciate you all staying up or being up very early with us, whichever you like to think about it. But again, I appreciate Mark Salva again for staying up late and talking with us. Mark, if you can summon the energy for one more send away for us.
You know what? Always go Noles. Always.